This was inevitable. This was inevitable. I predicted it or mentioned it, specifically mentioned it back in like September. Augusta, Maine School Board in Augusta, Maine, they are being sued by Nick Blanchard. Nick Blanchard, also known as Corn Pop from Maine on X. His handle, Corn Pop from Maine, PWA 1776, is finally suing. He was shut down. He was interrupted. He was threatened with law enforcement for over a year of going to Augusta, Maine School Board meetings and speaking. And every time he spoke, Miss Martha Witham, the chair, would interrupt him, would tell him that he was not abiding by the policy, which had vague terms like you can't be vulgar, you can't make disparaging remarks, you have to be only positive when you talk to the school board. And she would interrupt him, and then she would waste his time, and then she would say his time was up. And Nick took it for a year. When you look online, people talk about Nick Blanchard as being an agitator, an activist. He is provocative. He goes up. He's a little bit loud. He's in your face. All of which isn't illegal. And all of which a school board should be able to tolerate and has to be able to tolerate, because that's within your First Amendment rights to speak to them and tell them that they're doing a bad job, tell them that you don't like them, tell them that specific members of the board or specific members of staff in the school district are failing, and you get to openly say that in a board meeting, and they cannot shut you down. But Miss Witham decided each and every monthly board meeting that she was going to confront Nick on something. Again, interrupt him, cut his time. He was cut off. He played a recording of his own words, but he used a computer program that changed, made it sound like President Trump was speaking. She said that wasn't okay, that he didn't, she's like, I don't know who's speaking. It's like, well, Nick Blanchard is standing in front of you. He's the same guy who's been here every month for months on end. And of course, this all came from what? Title IX. Yep. Augusta, Maine likes boys to go into girls' bathrooms. Augusta, Maine School District likes boys to participate in girls' sports. And they won't back down on that. And then if you confront them, then they shut you down in the public forum. And Nick, many times in front of the board, said, you don't like what I say to you here, and you call it disparaging, and you say that's against your policy, BEDH. How do I know BEDH so well? Because they talked about it for months and months. They had specific board meetings, policy meetings about this policy. It is the public comment policy. It is several pages long. It has all sorts of stipulations as to what you can and cannot say, but it's all vague. And it's illegal. It's an illegal policy. And so I watched board meeting after board meeting as they talk about this specific policy. They don't get anything else done. They talked about this specific board board policy, BEDH, and tried to figure out how they could word it so that they could clamp down even more on people's rights, First Amendment rights to free speech. They, for months, thought they were in the clear, that they were abiding by this policy. Miss Witham would read the policy every time. She was the one that would shut you down, but she would only shut down people like Nick. She would not shut down people who said the board was doing a good job. She would not shut down another woman who would come in and make disparaging remarks about Nick and people like Nick. Miss Witham would sit back and listen intently to that. Absolutely. She wouldn't dare stop that woman from talking. So what is it? It's, of course, a school board that is pushing indoctrination on the kids. Again, allowing boys in girls' spaces, allowing boys who want to pretend to be girls in girls' sports. They're allowing that. They're pushing that. They're for that. So that was what triggered Nick to start coming, as far as I know, to talk to the board. Starting in like December of 2024, they even had another man arrested because he didn't want to leave the podium quite yet, because he said that they weren't paying attention. They're all on their phones, of course. They're all looking down. Nobody's actually paying attention. And back to my other point, Nick said, okay, you don't want to listen to me say what you say are disparaging remarks in front of the public, right? That's why this policy exists. Let's be very clear. Why they use that policy is because they don't want people to be able to publicly say that they're doing a bad job. They want to say, hey, there's a private way that you can do this, which is send us an email and we can take care of it that way. That's the policy. That's the way we would like to handle this. Except that when you send them an email, they don't respond. And when you look into it and say, does a school board have to respond to their constituents when they ask questions, when they reach out to them and send them emails? And if you look into that, you'll find out, no. Of course, it's good policy. That's what you're there for. You're there to serve the school, the students, the parents, and make education a priority. And so obviously communication would be a huge part of that. But no, they are not required to respond to you. And so they don't. And so Nick sent email after email, and in his remarks in front of the board, he would say, I've sent you guys emails months ago, and I keep talking about them in front of you, and say, you haven't responded to my emails. So if I can't talk in front of the board and air my grievances to you then, and of course they won't respond either to anything that you say. They just sit there. Either they listen to you or they shut you down. But then they won't respond to you, so that they hold all the power. And if you look at Martha Witham, if you saw her in the grocery store, you would think that she's just, an average middle-aged, probably a little bit older than middle-aged woman. But when you see her up on that, behind that dais, sitting up there, she holds all the power. And that's what she likes. And so now they have been sued, and even fire a group of attorneys who would help you navigate First Amendment issues and get your policies into compliance, they reached out and offered the Augusta, Maine School Board free of charge their services to help them get their policies in alignment, help educate them as to the First Amendment and what they can and cannot enforce as far as a school board, as far as the public comment section of a school board meeting. And they turned it down. And so now, Augusta, Maine, and their school board, Augusta, Maine School District, is now going to be on the hook for legal fees, attorney fees, for this lawsuit. And there is no other outcome but they will lose. They have had other attorneys get up in front of the school board and say, and swear and say, I can do that because it's part of my First Amendment, and you tell me I can't. And one woman had a huge track record that she laid out in front of them as far as her as an attorney protecting people's First Amendment rights and navigating the First Amendment. And then they went so far as to, they brought an attorney, not their main attorney, I don't know why, Nick Blanchard. There's a video of Nick Blanchard approaching what used to be maybe their Augusta, Maine's school's primary attorney in the lobby, and that person turned and ran away from Nick, would not have a conversation with him. So I haven't seen that person since. But this other attorney, he's featured in my videos. I've made 13 videos about this. This pisses me off so much. I have made 13 videos about this. Check them out. They're all labeled in a playlist under Augusta, Maine School Board. This other attorney then starts showing up to these side meetings, these policy meetings. I made a video about this because I watched the whole darn thing, and he didn't even know. He said, oh yeah, I mean, you can put rules out there and you can regulate what people say. No, you can't. I'm not an attorney. It's the First Amendment. It's pretty darn clear. So they paid this attorney to come to their board meetings and tell them, fluff their pillow and tell them you're doing everything right. Everything's fine. You're good. This policy's fine. You can enforce this. And then the next meeting, the next public meeting of the whole board that I saw, this attorney was there. So then they were paying him to show up to the meetings. And then people started pushing back on that and started pushing the First Amendment issue as far as what they could and couldn't say. And he, in front of, God and everybody, he backed down and said, oh, you probably should let these people talk. Well, there you go. He even knows that it was wrong for them to be shutting Nick and others down repeatedly over more than a year. And I think he was just, again, he was soft soaping them. He was fluffing their pillow and warming their milk and telling them everything was just fine. You guys are doing great, and just keep the attorney fees coming. And so here you go. Now, I pulled it up. January 27th of this year, Nick Blanchard, so it's Blanchard versus Augusta Board of Education et al. I can post a link to it in the comments. U.S. District Court for the District of Maine, Augusta Board of Education, Board Chair Martha Witham, specifically named, of course, and Augusta School Department. And just lays out the whole, if you pull up the lawsuit, it's like 27 pages long, and they go through every one of the videos. Honestly, I feel like maybe I've helped facilitate this a little bit with the videos that I've produced. As far as each one of the times that Martha shut him down, knowing that that wasn't a legitimate reason to stop him from speaking. And so they go through each one of the meetings, because they're all recorded and you can pull them up online, and say each one of the violations. So it's, I mean, I said this 6 or 8 months ago that this was probably going to be what needed to happen. Like, they weren't, the school board was not going to back down. They were not going to give in. They were not going to take any advice. They had meeting after meeting, like I said, just about this policy and how to tweak. And they talked about people feeling uncomfortable. And, God, you know, what if somebody gets loud and says some naughty words and kids are there? And you know what? Kids should be there. And kids should be there to hear somebody who's mad at the school board and who's mad at the school for indoctrinating children and telling boys that they can be girls, and telling boys that they can go into all the safe spaces for girls, telling boys that they can play girls' sports, since you obviously suck as a boy and can't make the boys' team or can't be competitive on the boys' team. Just flip and say that you're a girl and go on the girls' team, and then you can dominate, and then you can feel special. And they push that. They not only allow it, but they push it in this school district and many others. Unfortunately, I live in Minnesota. We've got the same thing going on here. We had a male who pitched for a girls' softball team, and they won state. And this male pitched every pitch for this team for all of the playoffs in the championship game. Not one other girl for this team pitched. This boy pitched every inning, every pitch, so that they could win the state championship. What a travesty, really. Everybody loses. That boy loses, being told that you're a girl and you're special now, and that this championship means anything. It's not true. It doesn't mean anything. That was all BS. And it's all BS for all the other girls on that boys' team. And it's BS for the team that should have won state. And all the domino effect that this team, you know, went through the playoffs and won all these games that probably shouldn't have won. And it's a travesty. And that is what started all of this, is that Nick got up and said, boys aren't girls. Boys shouldn't be in girls' sports. Boys shouldn't be in girls' locker rooms or any other girls' safe spaces. And Augusta, Maine School Board said, nope, we're going to allow that. We're going to push it. We're going to keep it going. And so now they're being sued, and I'm glad they're being sued. I'm an outside observer. The frustration for all the parents who know that this isn't right must be intense, and it has been going on, dragging on for so long. But I'm glad that they're going to get sued, and I'm glad that they're going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees, because that's what's going to happen. It will be hundreds of thousands of dollars that they will have to pay the attorneys for Nick Blanchard. And truly, Nick Blanchard probably won't make very much money, if anything at all. He's not suing for damages. He's not suing for pain and suffering or any of the other things that people file civil lawsuits who are trying to get money. He's trying to stop them from doing this in the future. Stop them from continuing to do this. And maybe Martha will finally figure out that she's no good. You know, that she can finally resign and move on. And maybe there's some other members of the school board who will realize that their time is up and they should move on as well. There's been some changes. They lost a good school board member in Katie McCormick. She was at the end of her tenure. James Orr is still there, fighting the good fight. And I think slowly things are starting to change. But, they insisted on this. And again, they thought they were above the law. They thought they were able to just write a policy, based on their own feelings, based on the fact that they don't want to be told that they're doing wrong, based on the fact that they want to tell boys that they can be girls and they can be in girls' sports and they can be in girls' bathrooms. And it came to a head, and I, for one, am glad that this will transpire, whether they settle it or whether they continue on. There's no way this lawsuit goes any other way but they settle and they pay whatever attorney's fees have racked up at that point, or they push it into an actual, trial or court hearings, and then they'll just rack up more and more attorney's fees that they will have to pay. But those are the only two ways that this goes. They have clearly violated his rights repeatedly for over a year. And so this lawsuit will be won by Nick Blanchard. Either it will be settled or he will win it outright. And I'm glad. But I called it. When I watched these school board meetings, I knew that this school board was not going to change. There were some, James Orr, Katie McCormick were the only two who were the bright spots on that school board. Katie is gone. It's just James Orr now. And I don't know who got elected to fill Katie's spot, but for months I watched these school board meetings, and every vote was James and Katie versus the rest of the board. And so I knew that this was going to have to come to a lawsuit. So even when they were offered free advice from an attorney group, they turned it down because they knew that the attorney group was going to tell them that they were wrong and that they were they were violating people's rights. And all Nick asked is for them to change it and start letting people speak. Really. That's it. And they wouldn't do it. So, people of Augusta, Maine, that's your school board right there. They wouldn't, even when they were told, even when they were shown, fire provided them a written document that showed all the reasons why what they were doing was wrong, and they didn't take that. So instead, they did what they wanted to do, which is shut down dissent. Martha wanted to continue to sit on her throne and regulate the speech in her school board meetings. And that's what she was there for. So people of Augusta, Maine, start contacting Martha Witham and tell her it is time to resign. You have done enough damage. It is time to move on. But Nick, you've been pushing this for a long time, and people call you an agitator, and people call you loud and an instigator and an activist. Well, you are an activist. You're an activist for the girls in Augusta, Maine. You are an activist when many other people wouldn't stand up and do the right thing. You are doing the right thing. You have done the right thing. There are many others who have also done the right thing, but they're they were drowned out so far by this school board. But now they're being sued. And Nick and justice will win. That's all I've got. Steve Loomis, Walking That Mile.